What are friends for?
Okay, 10 seconds.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
Hello and welcome everyone to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I am your host, Lynsie McKeown, and I'm so happy to be here. We have another amazing show. This show has been really growing quite quickly over the past 6 months. So I've been really excited to see more and more women coming on and listening to this show because we have such an important message to share on how to help women thrive unapologetically and really living from a place of truth and wisdom and all of our unique powers that we have as women that have tended to be pushed down or pushed aside or forgotten or made to feel less than. And so this is about reconnecting to those innate wisdoms and power and really to step into them with fullness and grace. And we have an incredible guest here today that is going to help us dive into these topics and more. But before we do introduce this beautiful woman, I want to take a moment to just stop and pause and breathe. So wherever you are, if you can, just close your eyes. You can stand, you can sit, you can lie down, and just connect to your breath. Because the way that we connect to our intuition and our power, women, is to connect to our bodies first. And we can connect to our bodies and this beautiful vessel that holds all of our wisdom simply through our breath, something very easy to do. So just breathing in and out through your nose and feeling yourself arrive in this moment and knowing that this moment is perfect for you, given your given circumstances, where you are in your life, in your body. In this moment, all is well. Take another deep breath in and out. And you can stay here as long as you like and breathe and simply listen to this show. If you're ready, you can even come back with your eyes fully open. If you're watching on our Facebook Live, we live stream on our Women Thriving Unapologetically Facebook group every show. And today we have Elysia Buss. So now I have known her, I don't even know how long, but I remember her the moment that I did meet her, because she was just so full of life and energy and so unapologetic and open in her authenticity. And I love that. And that's the topic of this show. Like, what does it mean to live unapologetically, authentic? Okay, help me out, Elysia. Authentically. There it is. There it is. Authentically.
Unapologetically and authentically.
Oh no, I'm doing a cleanse right now. So the brain is a little,
it happens. Yeah.
It happens. But she's an equine empowerment and confidence coach, inspirational speaker, equal rights activist. She has her own YouTube channel where she hosts tons of interviews. So check that out. And a men's and women's group leader. And her mission is to empower. Now listen to this. Her mission is to empower at least 1 billion people to have a voice and live their most authentic lives with confidence, joy, and expansiveness. And she focuses on the power of play, which I love, emotional regulation, which is essential, and personal accountability without shame, ladies. Can you imagine what that would be like to live without shame? So here we are. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that excellent introduction. I really appreciate it. I am very happy to be here. It's always fun to get to connect with you no matter where we are. And yeah, I really love what this show stands for. And so it's just that much more of an honor to get to be here with you today.
Yeah. And I'm so happy you're here because, well, first of all, I just want to, the thing that probably stuck out the most to people in that intro is 1 billion people. That's like 1/8 of the population. How does she plan on doing that? So let's just get that one out of the way.
You want to start with that?
Let's just start with that one, because that's probably what's sticking out. Because when I read when I first met you, you told me that, and I was like, I stood back like, really? That's impressive. So what's your plan? Like, why do you want to reach 1 billion people, and how do you plan on doing that?
Well, okay. So when I was a small child, I was 5. So I've been a medical massage therapist for like 20 years professionally and been giving people massage since I was 5. And when I was this little kid, I believed that I was such a big spirit that I wanted to hold the whole world's pain so that no one else would ever have to hurt.
Oh my, at 5.
At 5.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot to carry for a 5-year-old.
It is a lot to carry for a 5-year-old. And then fast forward, many years later, and I learned how to ground and let people have the autonomy to carry their own stuff, and that we can help to facilitate their empowerment, so they can grow and we have those healthier boundaries and not taking things on somatically, energetically, and whatnot. But I still wanted to help empower people so that they could just live these beautiful lives in their authentic selves and bring forward their natural talents to the world and help solve the world's problems, right? Because we have so many.
Just a few.
Just a few. And I think it's really important for every single person to have a voice and a safe space to articulate that and to be their unapologetic selves mindfully, which, if you're being mindful, you don't have to apologize as much, which is great. But 1 billion people, it's like in the Native American culture, they think about things as impacting 7 generations, right? And so around the world, we have so many different cultural perspectives that we can bring forward and getting to honor that and modeling for our children and the children's children. And so I wanted to impact 1 billion people because then over the course of time, hopefully the whole world could just be better. And to show the world that just because you're one person doesn't mean that you can't make a big and beautiful impact on the world. And that's why I try to give so many people a voice on my platform, so that they can just see that even as one person, they're worth it.
And I see that often. You have a Facebook group. You have several Facebook groups, you have a YouTube channel, and you are always interviewing just a wide array of people and giving just a platform for people to share what they do and have these deeper conversations. And it's beautiful to see how the variety that you bring in and the variety of conversations that you're having.
Thank you.
And I also have experienced, like, every time I'm posting something for, like, I have an event coming up, you immediately pipe in. It's like, hey, post it in my group. Let me share it for you. And I think as women, sometimes this can be, scary for us to trust other women, to actually in the generosity of others, because our dominant culture tells us that we should always be in competition. And this is deeply, this goes against our DNA and our natural gifts as women to be in competition. We're more inclined to be in community and of service. Right. And yet there's been this, we've been indoctrinated into these beliefs that we have to compete because, way back in the day, we were property and we had to compete for the best husband to make sure that we were provided for. So we were always pitted against each other. And what I love about you is you don't have that.
I don't.
And how is that? Like, in the past, have you felt yourself in competition with other women, and have you had to work through that? Or is this just something that you have this natural ability not to fear your competition? Or not
Yeah, that's a really deep question. I'm like, how vulnerable is it being that answer? In regards to all of that. So when I was a kid, I was always like that one kid in school that, like, if somebody new came in, I welcomed them and I wanted to show them around and I wanted to make them feel like they weren't alone and they could be accepted. So, and it didn't matter what gender they were. I wasn't one of the popular kids in school, in middle school and high school, other than like the traditional sense of popularity where I literally knew like all 400 kids in my class. But yeah, so I really credit my mom to that. Actually, she's an amazing woman, and we treated everybody with respect and community, and like it didn't matter what race you were, what gender you were, what your socioeconomic status was. Like, everybody was worth knowing. It didn't matter if they had a disability or different abilities, we like to say. And so I think that that's where it comes from more so. I think the only times that I was really in competition with other women was when I was younger, like a teenager, and struggling with relationships and power dynamics of feeling like disempowered and not feeling heard and seen and understood in other ways. And so I was more grasping in that. And so there were some things for me to work through to become a more ethical person, which I'm grateful to be today. And I think that that's part of the reason that I'm so open with people and accepting, and do my best to not shame people, and to just say we need personal accountability, and to recognize where the pain is coming from and why we're acting out in various ways that are not always functional. But instead of shaming ourselves for those things that we're doing that are not in alignment with our truth and integrity, that we're able to reach out to the people that are safe to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. This is the support that I need, be it from our partner, from our community, like our other girlfriends, to be able to transcend that space. And not to say that we shouldn't be, like, if you did something that is unethical, you should own that you did something unethical and not be like, it's fine, it's not a big deal, but just be like, yeah, I did something that was shitty. And here are the things that I need to do to make amends. And here's the truth that I need to speak to myself. And here are the actions that I need to take in the situations I need to put myself in, so I am able to stay in alignment. Like, if you're feeling weak, and then don't, like, if you're an alcoholic, don't go to the bar. If you're addicted to sugar, don't go to the sweet shop. Like, if you're struggling to like have ethical engagements with people that you're attracted to, don't be with them in private places. Like, stay with them in public if you still want to hang out with them as friends. Like, it doesn't make you a bad person because you're weak. It just means that you have to be really honest with yourself where your weaknesses are, so that you can show up in a way that's real. That's just a simple thing. And I think so much in society, we're like shaming other women who are struggling with their careers, or what they're eating, or if they've ever cheated on somebody in the past, or, like they're not trustworthy. It's like, well, if a person continues the action and refuses to look at what they're doing, then yeah, that person is most likely going to continue to not be trustworthy. If a person was going through a really difficult time in life, they did something that was unethical, they're like, shit, that was wrong, they took action and changed, then I think it's important to be able to see the person for where they are in present time, give them the benefit of the doubt within a space of healthy boundaries and communication, while they're able to rebuild that trusting process.
And what really stands out to me with this is that this creating the loving space, so that we can come into it and be like, okay, I've done some things that I am ashamed of. I've done some things that are not, maybe amoral, but, depending on whose lens is we're looking through.
Exactly.
And so, but being able to sit there with other women and to share that, and know that you're not going to be shamed, that you're not going to be judged. I think that is incredibly powerful and healing in it of itself, because that's how we've stayed small as women through millennia, is to be shamed.
Yeah.
And to be afraid of saying our truth or finding our voice. And so I love that idea of just like coming into this sacred space, or I say sacred space, you say safe space, same.
Yeah, for sure.
And saying that, okay, tell us what, and this is the beautiful thing about being coaches, because we're both coaches, is that, hey, come into this space, let me hold you, let's share. But it's even more powerful when you bring in a group of women and be able to have that experience, that you're not going to be burned by other people's judgment and criticisms. And
yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I love about having such a diverse group of women that I get to be friends with is that we can have sometimes polar opposite viewpoints and value systems, but because we have respect for one another and we know that we're coming from a place of positive intent, we're able to have conversations of mutual curiosity and respect about the other person's viewpoint and life experience, and not shame each other in the process. And I mean, I think that's next level communication and friendship right there. And oftentimes we have to do the work within ourselves to be able to become secure and not reactive, and know that, like, if we do get triggered, that trigger is our responsibility, because the person that triggered us is actually giving us a gift, because they're showing us where we have a wound that we still need to heal. And healing is our responsibility, just like it's our responsibility to tell the person who triggered us, which was potentially malintended, or just somebody being clumsy in their engagements, or stumbling upon something they didn't know was there, and telling them how you feel, telling them what you need from them, and being okay with feeling irrational potentially in that moment. Be like, hey, I'm feeling just this turbulation inside of myself, and my bandwidth is short today. So we need to either change the topic, or I just need to like get off the phone, for instance, and give myself some space to reset. And then when I'm in a space of neutrality, I can come back and have that conversation with you.
And so is this what you would consider the emotional regulation part of it?
I would consider that just healthy communication and boundaries. I think that's just acknowledging where you're at with things and not feeling shame about it. Because if you're just being yourself, your authentic self, and you're feeling the experience of being human, like you shouldn't feel shame about that, right? And getting to have the emotional regulation is acknowledging that, and then knowing what are the things, the steps that you need to take to be able to come back into that space of neutrality, right? Because if you're just like at the effect of your feelings, and your feelings and your energy are just like everywhere and spilling out over everybody, right? That's not really emotional regulation. That's just you not taking responsibility for your life experience. And some days we don't have the bandwidth to be able to reel ourselves in. And that's when that's the honest part with yourself. Just being like, you know what, I'm done. I can't people today. Like I've got nothing left to be able to reel myself in. I don't have the time to handle it today. And that's okay. But I need to know that I need to not talk to these people, or need to do the best job I can in this situation, or just tell people, hey, I'm not really in the best headspace today. And so please don't take anything personal that comes out of me, because it's not actually malintended. I just having a moment.
And I'd love to be able to clarify what we mean by, or what you mean by emotional regulation, because sometimes I feel like this is a delicate topic, because as women, we've been told like, oh, your emotions are messy and you need to keep them tidy. You're being too much.
Oh,
So
I get that one all the
that,
time.
yeah. So I want to make sure the women listening here that we're not saying that, don't feel all the things.
No.
That your feelings are bad, that if you're
Nope.
having emotions, let them come forward and not regulate them in the sense of trying to push them down or adjust them to make other people happy.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it's absolutely not about adjusting them to make people feel happy. It's about adjusting them so that you can be your most authentic self and not be at effect of your emotions in a way that is unbalanced. Because for instance, like if you feel rage, there's nothing wrong with feeling rage. Rage is the appropriate response to seeing an injustice or experience an injustice, for instance. It's how you channel that emotion that is where regulation comes in. So for instance, like if you're feeling rage, and I use rage as an example, especially because I feel like as women, we're not supposed to get to feel rage, and that's a bunch of silliness. So when we feel rage, it's who is a safe person to talk to that I can just like say everything that I need to in a really emphatic and big way. It's do I need to, like, sometimes when I'm really mad, I have a bucket of softballs in my truck and a baseball bat. And if I'm having a rough time, I just go to the baseball field and I hit the shit out of some balls. And that's how I get the energy out of me. Like that's a form of regulation. It's not saying to stuff it down. It's to find a safe place, activity to channel it to where it needs to go.
You said baseball bat. I'm like, I was waiting for it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, if there's if there's a place, I think it would be great if we could have like just old cars and baseball bats. So you just put on like eye protection and just to go beat the shit out of like old cars, and people just pay money to do that, or you go and you like break plates. I think if there's a place like that in Washington State where I'm from, but no, and it's just like if somebody's in love, right? Sometimes their feelings can get really manic and out of control, because people in society say, oh, love is so great. And I'm like, is it though? Because, that stalker might love you. I wouldn't say that that's in control. So it's just recognizing that any emotion can take you out of balance. Doesn't matter if it's love or it's grief or like joy or rage or any of the things on the magnificent scale of emotions. It's just recognizing, okay, what is this feeling? Am I in a place where I can fully express myself to the magnitude of what I'm feeling? Or do I need to shift a little bit? Like if you're in the library, that's not the place to go yell. If you're like other some place like that, it's just, you get to choose. It's just like a bunch of like Marines, let's say, just because I feel like it's in, like, we have lady Marines, so let's like stick with that too. It's just like Marines, they go to church and they know that you can't swear and talk like you do to other Marines when you go to church. You know, when you go to your kid's school, you don't get to act a certain way. When you go to the bar, you do get to do those things because it's a more appropriate place, or a barbecue, you know? And so it's not about saying don't feel things. It's about knowing when and where and how it's good for you to be able to express those in a way that respect yourself and the people around you.
Yeah.
Not people pleasing.
And so from a yogic perspective, it's we talk a lot about awareness, like be aware of the emotions that are coming up, because they're usually tied to a thought. They're always tied to a thought or a
Sure,
belief.
yeah.
And just understanding, okay, I'm feeling the heat of the rage in my belly, which means I know what's going to happen next if I don't breathe into my belly. If I don't really breathe into that, understand, okay, this person said this thing to me, but it's really just triggering or activating this old wound that makes me feel this way. And I know from the past, when I feel this way, I act through maybe screaming or yelling or throwing something. And instead, oh, I'm so aware of this, I can breathe into it, feel that regulation happening and be like, okay, and I can step back and witness it. And so then I can channel that energy into something that's more powerful and potent and more in line with the heart. So that's how I interpret it. And I would love to bring that back in after our break, but we're already at the first break.
Oh my goodness, it went so fast.
So fast. So if you're listening, we're here with Elysia Buss, and we're talking about how to live authentically, unapologetically through mindfulness and a lot of other tools that she's going to bring forward. But I just wanted to announce that I'm going to be leaving the Voice America Empowerment Channel family and venturing out on my own. But if you love this show, because it's been growing and I'm having so many women talking about how much they love this show. If you really want to stay connected, the best way that you can do that is reach out to me at Lynsie.tv/practices. What you'll do is you'll sign up for my email list. I will send you all the information of the new show, and you'll also get my practices, yoga nidra, breathing, and meditation that will help you stay regulated and feeling really calm and steady in challenging times. We'll be right back after this short break.
Good job, Alker.
Hey.
All right, so we're still recording.
We're still
Do we say recording during the breaks, I assume?
They just told us.
We're live streaming.
Oh, that felt good. How did it feel for you?
Yeah, I feel like I'm not doing a great job of being as clear as I'd like to do it today.
Okay.
It's succinct, but that's okay, because it's all part of the process and being authentic, and that's okay, because it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's real.
No, and I think I mean it's making sense to me. So
Well, hey, that's excellent feedback. So thanks for that.
And also it's every listener will get what they need out of it.
I deeply believe that.
Some little piece will come forward, and
it's true.
We can't digest it all at once. So
yes,
always here.
Yeah, and then I forgot the whole thing for my process, because I'm wanting to have my different groups for the men and women and the horse groups in every country in the world. That's the process, and having memberships there. And
okay,
I can go on and on about that stuff if you want. And if you want to loop back around to it, but we don't have to.
And we can even bring that back in at the end so they can know how to connect with you and how they can be part of the 1 billion people that you'll be influencing. And so maybe we can bring in the equine therapy, empowerment coaching.
It's not therapy though, because I'm not a counselor.
Okay, coaching. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
We're just about to come back.
Okay.
Super fast.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I'm Lynsie McKeown, and I'm here today with Elysia Buss. I did it. I knew I would do it because you told me not to do it. Planted the seed. I'm blaming you because I knew it was Buss, and you told me the story, and then planted in my head, and then I said it. We're just gonna say I did that deliberately.
Fine, yeah, I have all kinds of nicknames out in the world.
I know. So I just, brought up the trauma from a childhood experience. I apologize.
It's so hard. Oh,
let's process that, man. Okay.
Just gonna do some live processing and coaching right now, and go deep into the inner child.
Yeah. So let's dive back in, because you offer so many things, and I'm always amazed because I'm always get overwhelmed if I do too many things, and I try to do all these different things, and then I get overwhelmed. I'm like, no, like, what is your 1 to 2 things? And that's what works for me, so that I can honor my pace. And then I look at you, and your pace is different because you have the capacity to do a lot of different things, and one's not better than the other. Because I want people, when listening, like, don't feel, because we are subjugate ourselves to this idea that we have to do more to be more. You do what is right for you so that you can stay living authentically and thriving at the same time. And so it's going to look, what I do is going to look different than what you do, but I am very amazed at how much you do. And one of the things that you do is the empowerment coaching with horses. So tell us more about that, because I'm not a horse person, but I do love them and honor them because they are massive beast that scare me a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Gosh, there's so much in what you just said. And so before I jump into the horses, there is a point that I would love to make. Just because I feel like as women business owners, especially, we tend to put a lot on ourselves. Many people out there, they're running households, they have kids, they have their businesses. We're expected to keep up with the house and our physical being, and go to the gym and eat out, all these things, right? All these social standards. And there's something my mother used to say to me, and I keep bringing her up just because there's lots of great points today on that. And we have 3 kids in the household, and we ran a 15-acre farm, and said, if it's not life or safety, it can wait. It doesn't really matter. And I think that's just a really important thing to remember, especially as women business owners. So we put these expectations on ourselves that we create these deadlines, and we create the stress for ourselves. And oftentimes it's a struggle to reel it back in and be like, oh yeah, that's not a non-negotiable. It's not life altering. I don't necessarily have to make that deadline. And just giving yourself the grace to be self-care is important. So for instance, I will book a certain period of time in my day and just be I'm going hiking. It is my time to reset and forest bathe and just come back to myself. And especially when I have a whole lot of things to do. So people are how are you doing all these things? You're doing, you do so much. It's and I do so much because I honor myself to make sure I'm taking the time, taking Epsom salt baths, journaling my gratitudes in the morning and stream of consciousness, and just honoring okay, well, maybe I'd today hit the wall. I'm going to come home and I'm going to watch 3 hours of TV if that's what I feel I need to do. We do a lot, but it doesn't mean I'm doing all of it at the same time. Right. And creating different goals and be when do I want to do what at what time frame. And that actually loops into the work with the horses, because of the work that I do with horses. So right now I don't have my own horses. So I primarily work with other people and their horses. And then I can go to retreats and do the inspirational speaking stuff with the horses too. And it's really about working with horses at liberty, because I think it's really important for us to respect the horses as sentient beings and give them the autonomy of choice, just like we should give it to each of us as human beings as well. And so when working with the horses at liberty, that means that I don't have a rope connected to them. They don't have a saddle or bridle or halter or anything like that. And it's really just paying attention to their energy and the nonverbal communication that they're giving me and what I'm putting out and how they're responding to that. And it's about being present, right? Because if your mind is busy with a million different projects that you need to get done, you're not present, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, if we are thinking about too many things, it's really easy for us to give mixed messages to people, to horses and whatnot, without even realizing it. And so people are more likely to be present with the horses because it's helps with safety, because they are large animals, like you said, and they're intimidating, right? And so sometimes, especially if people are afraid of the horses, when I did have my horses, I'm like, we can work on the other side of the fence line, because I'm not about traumatizing the people in front of me. I like to work with people where they're at a healthy gradient to get them to where they need to go. And if they're like, I just need little baby steps and it takes longer, that's fine, because it's going to be more functional. And then you have other people that really like to push themselves, and so their jumps are going to be bigger. And that's also fine. There's no wrong way to go about interpersonal growth, as long as you're being honest, I feel like, with yourself.
And what I loved, what I pulled out of that, well, there's a lot. The thing that really stood out to me is that working with these animals as and giving them liberty and authority, you can teach other women to do what that would feel like to receive that. Because if you're giving that to another being, and especially a non-human being, because there's so much healing that can happen with animals, and that you can actually see how that animal can come alive and be more present with you. And then what would that feel like if you had that for yourself? And I think that's just a beautiful exchange that can happen in a healing. And I'm assuming, because I've done this with other animals. So tell me more about how like it's really affected women in this way, that of being with these animals and giving them this authority and liberty to be who they are without being bridled or saddled or held down.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of trust. I think a lot of women have had their boundaries crossed. I think we can easily agree upon. And then people pleasing comes forward sometimes as a form of like, please don't hurt me, right? Like it's more of a fawning response from a trauma response. And so you'll work with horses sometimes that are very pushy on your boundaries. They want to be all up in your space, and that doesn't necessarily make you feel safe. And so then the women have to learn how to have a voice and come forward to create those healthy boundaries. You know, it's not like they're not hitting, definitely not allowed to hit the horses or anything like that. But how do you bring that energy up within yourself, which can be a different form of like emotional regulation, right? Like energetic regulation of like, okay, how do I make it big and make it small? And so you're making your energy bigger, and then the horse is like, oh, so it's a force that's going outwards. And so that's how the horse meets you. And then the horse goes off, right? If you need space. And then if somebody has a lot of boundaries up and they're struggling with connection, the horse is like, you don't feel safe, right? And so how do they come into their bodies to be able to be okay with themselves and be inviting of that authentic connection, and learn how to receive a safe, authentic connection?
That's beautiful. I mean, I love how, again, it comes back to being in your body
Yeah.
and really feeling into that and creating that boundary. And you took your hand to your belly when you did that. And what I love is, because that is so in sync with what we teach in yoga, that if you want personal boundaries, you got to go down into the belly and get a lot of strong energy here. And that's going to radiate out. I don't know if that's what you teach, but that's where your hands went. And then I saw that, and it's like that's where we find that power to create those boundaries without force, which I think is so important, because our dominant culture teaches us that, you know, we have to do things through force or aggression. But when we're really in our bodies and really like understand how to channel the energy there, then we can create those boundaries from a much different place. That's actually more what I call in line with the divine feminine way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. Is there
Yeah.
anything you want to add to that? Because I just kind of riffed off of your thing. And
No, I love it. I love riffing. I'm a big fan of it. And I love the points that you brought forward. And yeah, definitely there's a difference between boundaries out of protection and boundaries out of grounded confidence.
yes,
Just like, this is who I am, this is what I tolerate, this is what I don't tolerate. And you're welcome if you're in alignment with that, and you're not if you're not. And just being very matter of fact about it. Be like, I don't have to be mad at you. This is just what it is. And it's great. It's also interesting. So another thing that people don't talk about very often is I think that there's a lot to do, like from the sex coaching that I do, right? Obviously, we're not having sex with horses. Let's just get that out of the way, folks. I know some of you have a moment when you're like, what is she talking about? And it's funny, it's in my book. But like, and the book's not done yet, but I'll make sure and let you all know what it is. Because my book's title is Sex, Comedy, and Confidence, A Reflective Journey with Horses, and talks about my own experience with all those three things, because I also do stand-up comedy sometimes. And but our sexual energy is our creative energy. Like those of you that have children, like all of us as women, like may or may not be, like fertile or whatever, but in general, as concepts, like that's where we're creating life, y'all. And so just like when we're creating our businesses and we receive from that space, right? And so sometimes when we have sexual blocks from experiencing trauma or different considerations that we have, then sometimes people struggle to receive money, and they struggle, like, we're not talking receiving money from the standpoint of prostitution, in case that's like not clear for people. That's not where we're going here. That is not the kind of business we're talking about.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, we're not, no. People do whatever they want to on what's that? There's like some app or whatever. I forget. But it's about harnessing our creative energy through our sexual energy. So for instance, if you have a lot of sexual energy and maybe it kind of like spills out everywhere, and it can sometimes make people feel uncomfortable, it can give mixed messages to people. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of sexual energy. I have tons of sexual energy. Like, it's like crazy amounts. One time I was salsa dancing. I used to be a semi-professional Latin dancer in my 20s, and I was dancing with this one guy, and he was like, you were like 20 pounds of sex stuffed in a 10-pound bag, just like bursting at the seams. At the time, I thought that was pretty funny, but I don't think he actually meant it as a compliment, but it's fine. The point being is that, like, part of the reason I love creating so much is I get to channel that energy of creation, that's the sexual energy, and I get to use it towards projects, right? Because it doesn't have anything that's negative to it. It's just creative force, right? Creative, or flow, as we'd like to say, not necessarily force, it's flow. I think of force as like power, because something can be in flow, but also be extremely powerful, which we are as women. We're extremely powerful as human beings, as creatures, and being able to honor what that is. And a lot of people have the same problem with horses as they do in their sex life, which is being present, having healthy boundaries, having healthy communication, being able to advocate for your needs and desires, paying attention to the nonverbal communication and energy of your partner, whoever that is in front of you, whatever gender that is. And so when we work with horses on the ground, it's all about all of those things. It's just not sexual. Right?
Not sexual.
It's not sexual.
It's not harnessing your sexual creative energy.
Right.
You are an empowered woman.
Right. It's about honoring all of that energy and what you're doing and how we channel any of our emotions, any of those, like the body of energy and power within us, and knowing how to channel it. And just being like, yeah, I'm powerful, and that's awesome. And here's the ways I'm going to ethically utilize that energy in my life to thrive unapologetically and authentically and mindfully, and get to be all of my full self, even when it feels messy. And there's nothing wrong with it feeling messy. And you can do things in life without knowing what it looks like. It doesn't need to be perfect. Like, we show up, and there have been times in this interview where I'm like, yeah, I feel like that didn't come out as clearly as I would have liked to, but
I feel that way every single show.
Right. And it's just like, it is beautiful. It's just like, sit here and be real and model that for people and be like, hey, just show up and be you, and people will love that. They love the authenticity. And
yeah, we don't like the perfection, although we look to the perfection as the ideal, but we don't really like that. We like the messiness. Like, when we read a novel, do we want to read the novel where the woman has everything from birth and everything's perfect and she gets everything she's ever wanted in life? And no,
we usually breed things that are not great.
I know. We want things that are more real and messy and more aligned with this being human on this earth. So I really appreciate you saying that, because, we talk a lot about thriving unapologetically on this show. And thriving is about moving towards one's goals in spite of life circumstances, that you're always moving forward through the mess, through the tears, through the grief, through the loss. You're still moving towards your goals that are in alignment with your heart. And the unapologetic piece is stop saying you're sorry to yourself,
Oh
to your
my
own
gosh.
heart. Like always, I was saying, I'm sorry, I can't, I hear this heart guidance, I feel it. And I'm saying, sorry, I can't do this because I'm shrinking. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough education. I don't have enough money. I don't know how. And then that just broke my heart over and over and over again until I'm like, okay, stop apologizing and listen to her. Even if it's scary, move towards that goal, even if it's scary. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that when we come back after this break, if that sounds good to
For
you. Who knows what
sure.
we'll
Oh
talk about?
yeah.
I say that often. I'm like, we'll talk about it when we come back and let's talk about something else. But if you're listening, please stay tuned because we have another segment here and we'll dive back in. And if you know this, what do I want to say here? Our last episode of Women Thriving Unapologetically on the Voice America Empowerment Channel will be November 10th. However, the show will return to all of your favorite podcast sites. So be sure to join my newsletter so that you will know when that's going to air. And also, if you want to be a supporter of an independently run women's business and show, reach out to me at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. And let's rise and thrive together, women. We'll be right back after this show.
That's right. Do it. She's amazing.
Good segment. All clear.
Probably gonna get in trouble for saying that, but I don't care. Yeah. Take a risk. Stand up for what you want.
You just being your authentic self.
Yeah. So so we want to definitely bring in how you how you're gonna reach the billion people. So it'd be a nice way to tie that in because I know that's important to you to share. And I want to make sure that they know how to reach you. And so I have your global equine, affiliates.com. Is that the best way?
So we
have ask you and you can tell everybody.
Yeah, you can just ask me because there's that one. And then I'm in the middle of creating a membership program for playfulpivot.com. And so the website isn't completely done, but I've decided that I'm just going to tell them that the website isn't completely done, but there's enough of it to be able to go on there and subscribe or whatever and just check it out because we're going to have a library of videos and then weekly experts that'll lead group coaching stuff. And yeah.
Perfect. Yay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Thank you. Yeah. So the first month will be on finances and then we'll do inner child work and then we'll do relationships. And then I'm thinking about bringing in wellness and and so just figuring out each of the different months where we have speakers for like each weekend and then figuring out what people need. And
we're heading back now. So,
okay. Reel her in. Reel her in.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Welcome back, everyone, to Women Thriving Unapologetically on the Voice America Empowerment channel. This is Lynsie McKeown, as I said before, but we're here. I'm going to get this right this time. Elysia Buss.
There you go. Great job. We got through it.
I don't know what it is about like names. Like I will know someone's name, and when the moment comes to say their name, I do something weird with my mouth, and I'm like, "What is that?"
You're just like, "What just happened?"
I know. I'm like, what? Really? I've practiced this over and over again, and then in the moment, it's just I was like, "Okay, I'm just going to." This is when I can apologize.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's interesting too, because like on the matter of apologizing, because we have in our trauma responses, we have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And we don't talk about fawning very often as one of the trauma responses. But I think it's important for us to do it because there's so much of the people pleasing that comes from that. I remember having a client that worked with the horses when I had my horses back in Washington State. And I was about ready to have like a jar for her, like a swear jar, but for every single time she said sorry, because I swear to God, it was like every other word out of her mouth. And I was just like, okay, we're just going to work on this. And because when you say I'm sorry all the time, it's like, are you actually sorry, or are you just afraid that you're going to get in trouble for what you just said because of how the reactivity from the person that's in front of you? You're like, every time you say I'm sorry, you're like, please like me, don't hurt me. And I'm not shaming anybody in that experience. Like, let me be super clear. It's more about just identifying that as a response that we oftentimes have. And it's important for us to understand what our value system is. And when we cross the line within ourselves, when we should be sorry both to ourselves and the person that's in front of us. You're like, I'm sorry, I did something that was out of alignment. Here's how I'm going to change. Because that's the other piece of the puzzle, is like, when you just compulsively say I'm sorry all the time, you're like, well, what are you doing to take action to change so that you don't need to continue to say that I'm sorry? What awareness do you need to bring to yourself and your engagements with others to stop doing that? And it's great to say I'm sorry and to feel like you care about people. It's like, where is it coming from within yourself? Are you saying I'm sorry because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings and you accidentally hurt somebody's feelings? Okay, like, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry, I meant to say something a certain way, it came off the wrong way. I care about your feelings. How are you feeling? Having those sorts of dialogues. And versus saying I'm sorry for yourself because you're afraid.
Oftentimes it's just a habit that we've picked up on. We're not even recognizing how many times, like you said, you had to have your client put the money into the jar every time that she said, I'm sorry, just to give her a visual of how often that she was saying it. Like, oh, that's a lot of money.
I didn't actually make her do that. I was like a joke. I was like, I felt like I should have, because it was like all of the time. And so I told her, I'd be like, you said it again and you said it again, and and be like,
I think the visual representation would be great, because then all of a sudden we're very much attached to our money, and when we see
I should have. I'd be like, hey, I need you to bring a lot of money to session today. I promise I'll give it back to you, but you need to see the physical representation.
For the sex coach saying, bring a whole bunch of ones to the session.
Right. Be like, hey, take me right back to my 20s.
She'll be like, what kind of therapy is this?
Goodness gracious. Be like,
yeah. So
sex coaching is not a hands-on experience for anybody out there that's not familiar with sex coaching. Hands-on work for that those are sexological body workers. If you're not familiar with that, I recommend watching the Netflix special Sex, Love, and Goop. It's a great special. It's to talk about the erotic blueprint. It's to learn about the different aspects of like sexuality, and in a really healthy, beautiful, well done documentary format.
So why don't you clarify, what sex coaching is for you, so everyone understands it a little bit clearer?
Sure. Sex coaching for me is really about creating safe spaces for people to talk about their feelings about sex. It's not therapy. I'm not a counselor. I need to be like super clear with people about all of that. I can do that with couples. I can do that with individuals. And it's really about helping people take the shame away from their viewpoint in regards to their body and their sexual experience, and acknowledging where things are coming from in the present, because counseling is more like the past, right? Coaching is about in the present and what you're going to do to help facilitate a better future that's in alignment with who you are in your value system. And then just helping people to have those healthier boundaries within themselves and with other people, because sometimes with our sexual energy, depending on what we have experienced in our past, especially if we experienced trauma, you might not have great boundaries with yourself and how you are engaging with the outside world. And to forgive yourself for any of your past indiscretions, as well as forgiving other people, is really important, because forgiving somebody and forgiving yourself is not condoning the action.
Thank you for saying that. It's not condoning the action.
It is not condoning the action. It is very important for people to understand that difference. But forgiving yourself and forgiving other people is letting go to the energetic tether that is connected to that experience.
And then you free up all that energy. I don't think people understand that, not being able to forgive yourself or others, how much energy that takes to hold on to something. It's like you're holding on.
Oh my God.
This 50-pound baggage that you have to tote around all the time. Everywhere you go, you have to carry that weight with you all the time. And then when you finally let it go, you're no longer carrying that. You're like, wow, one, I didn't realize how tired I am from carrying that. And now I need to rest myself. And then two, like, oh, now I have so much freedom, energy. I have more freedom to move because I'm not carrying this stuff. I have more freedom just to be myself without that load, that weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another important point is that it takes the time that it takes. So for instance, like I had a really traumatic thing happen to me back in Washington State, and it took me at least 6 months of almost every day just being like, I forgive this person. I cut the energetic cords to this person. And like the thoughts were just so invasive, like they would just keep coming into my brain. And yeah, and it literally took me probably 6 months before I was able to just be in a clear space about it. And sometimes people think you can just
6 months is impressive. I'm still working with one person from 16 years. So, but it's gradual, and it does take the time that it takes. I remember I had one of my very first spiritual mentors. I was in like what I called the pit of despair, which is really the dark night of the soul, but I didn't know about the dark night of the soul. So I came up with my own name. And I remember him, I was like, how many times do I have to be here? And he's like, as many times as it takes.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've ever wanted to punch a minister. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Really?
So much.
Now, I hear myself telling that to my clients, and I like duck a little bit.
Yeah, right. That's super funny. Yeah, I'm really honest with my coaching clients. Like I will share about my life experience so that they don't feel so alone in things that they have experienced, because I don't feel shame about it. It took me a really long time to let go of the shame from quite a few things in my past that I did that were like less than ideal. And but I'm not a perfect person. Like the pain that I've experienced, the trauma that I've experienced, the less than ideal things that I did when I was young and ignorant and arrogant and entitled and had a hard edge to me. Like people meet me these days, they're like, oh, you're so sweet, nice, and all the things. And I'm like, oh, I am. But it like some of those, and that's like the core of who I am, is being a sweet person. But it took a lot of work. Took a lot of work on myself to get to where I am today at age 42, to be like very grounded, very mature, and yet still be able to play and be real and know that it's okay. And I think that when we share our stories, it's like you become a permissionary. You give permission to other people to share their story, because they're like, oh, like this person experienced something, and by them sharing, that means that I'm probably safe to share my own story with them too. And then they share that story.
In the power of circles, bringing the
oh my gosh,
together.
yeah, 100%.
And if we start to share our experiences in the sacredness of a woman's circle, then you have that permission to open up, and you realize you're not alone.
Yes.
And so because we're coming near the end of the show, I want to make sure everyone knows where they can come and sit with you in circle, because this is part of your mission too.
It is true. Yeah. So right now there are 2 ways that are pretty easy. So if you want to be on my show, the YouTube channel, Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection, or if you want to collaborate with me on a retreat or a workshop or something cool, or you want to do the coaching with me, you can go to www.globalequineaffiliates.com. Now, here's my vulnerable piece, is that I've been creating a membership. The website is not completely done, but if you want to write this down so that you can go look at it and stay tuned, it's a membership on playfulpivot.com. And so I'll be bringing on weekly experts in different fields to be able to deep dive into conversation with the group. And we'll have a library, and then you can get one-on-one coaching with me at the top tier membership program. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it, because I've had a lot of transition in my life, and I am exceptionally resilient, and I'm great at holding on to joy and wonder through that. And I'm really excited to be able to help facilitate that gift to other people.
And I love the name Playful Pivot, because play is so important. I teach this to my clients as well. Like, we have to bring in more play. I have to remind myself of this all the time, because that is what brings in the joy. And it's through the joy that we stay more aligned and doing the things that we love. And sometimes we have to create that for ourselves. So I really appreciate you sharing so much of yourself and being, just so open and authentically you. And then I know that's taken work. It takes work for all of us. And it's a daily thing. Every time we show up on these calls, we're being vulnerable. It might seem like we're having an easy conversation, but like you say, sometimes we bumble our words or call the guest the wrong name. But it's okay because there's no such thing as the perfect woman, the perfect human. And so we just keep showing up. So definitely go over and check out Elysia's YouTube channel, because then you can see all the interviews that she's doing. And then you can actually see what's going to be on her platform, an example of that. Or you could even join, you forgot to mention your women's Facebook group, which
Yes.
is the women's
Phoenix Rising Women's Group on Facebook has over 400 women from around the world who show up and share, and you're allowed to promote your business on my platform because I'm here to support all of you out there, ladies. And then if you want to check out my Instagram, it's at Elysia Buss, ELYSIABUSS. And then I have different events sometimes that I post up there that I'm doing locally in Charlottesville, Virginia with my women's group, talking about circles. If you want to be in a physical circle, we do those for the women's group on meetup.com. And then we have, so much.
But everything's on your website, so we'll be able to tap in there. So if you're listening, thank you so much for being here yet again for Women Thriving Unapologetically, and honoring all of our guests here and honoring yourself and taking the time to really tap in to what is important and sacred for you. And if you want to continue to tap into that, just remember to reach out to me so that you can be on our email list for upcoming podcast shows of Women Thriving Unapologetically. You can reach out to me on 2 ways, lindsay.tv/practices, and you'll get on the email list and get some amazing practices for you to keep you grounded and nurtured in times of change. So we'll be here next week with another amazing guest. Take care, everyone. This is Lynsie McKeown on Women Thriving Unapologetically. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, nicely done. Good show. All clear.
Okay.
You're gonna turn off the recording button.
So let's pop over to the Facebook group and see if we have any questions, and then maybe we'll just keep recording.
Sure. I'm here for it. Let's have some fun. Oh, I also forgot to say that if there are any women in any other countries who are interested in collaborating with me to have a group for their country specifically, I would love to have the opportunity to connect with them.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't see any questions. We have comments though, that it's nice to join live on Facebook for the first time. Zawadi mentions that there's a rage room in Richmond, Virginia.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Wow, that would be interesting to go see. And then
maybe we should have a ladies' night there.
A what site?
A ladies' night in the rage room in Richmond.
Well, there's no questions here. The group tends to add things in later, but that's okay because
sure.
The timing of the day. But is there anything that you would like to mention that we didn't have time to mention on the live radio that you feel really important to share, or do we feel complete today?
I think that for women to thrive, it's so important to be able to be open and to not make assumptions about other women, especially.
Yeah.
Like if you worry, I talk to women because I feel really lonely sometimes, like I do. I think that a lot of people think that I'm super busy or that I am not needing other people because I am such a strong personality, or that I don't need help. And I think that it's really important for us as women to remember to reach out to our strong friends and reach out to the people who are quiet. And if you're feeling lonely and people aren't trying to make plans with you, just put something out in a group that locally or on your Facebook page, and just be like, hey, I would love to hang out with somebody, these are the days that I have available, or is anybody else feeling lonely? Or
I've seen you actually do that before, and that takes a lot of courage to do that. And I appreciate that. And then everyone always chimes in and oh, yay, I will.
Yeah,
it works. It actually works.
Yeah, I was at the Boss Babe's 5-year anniversary party just recently, and I was sitting down with 2 people, and these wonderful women, and I was just sometimes I wonder, I'm does anybody actually even like me in town? I was no, they didn't reach out and hang out, and I see things posted. I'm just I don't know if what the situations were. So that's a vulnerable thing for me to get to share live and recording or whatever. And both of the ladies said the same thing. They're just like, yeah, you know, like I'm really lonely too. One person was like, yeah, my husband is like in business school or whatever, and I just feel lonely. And the other one's like, yeah, I'm really busy with my business, and I opened this thing that like nobody came or whatever. And then I got to hang out with both of them, and it was beautiful. But had I not stepped forward and vulnerably shared what I shared about feeling like, I was like, does anybody like me? Like, what's happening? Why do I not get invited? Then they wouldn't have felt safe to share.
Yeah.
And they were just like, I'm really glad that you said something, and now I don't feel so alone, and we should totally hang out. And then they took action afterwards. They followed up and took action, because that's the other thing. Because sometimes people will say something in the moment and then they don't take action at all. That shit bugs me.
And we don't know why they don't take action, but we're like,
we don't know why.
We don't know why. And there's assumptions there. So we're always making assumptions. And I think, you know, I fall victim to that all the time. And I'm always catching myself like, okay, because it's just so deep in our bone marrow to judge and to criticize other women, because we needed to be safe a long time ago. We needed to create safety for ourselves, because if we didn't have a man, we didn't have the resources we needed to live and survive. It was very dangerous. So it's in there. And then it's just been passed down from one generation to the other. Our mother's been teaching us that, and it's become a habit. Like, okay, make sure you behave a certain way or do a certain thing so that you can be safe within circles of women and circles of men and all that stuff. And so coming into these spaces and being really vulnerable. And I'll tell my vulnerable story since you shared yours. And because I'm like you, so many people are like, I can't believe you share what you share. I'm like, well, and so, but it's important to do that for the work that we do.
Yeah.
And, announcing today, I did not tell Voice America yet. I'm having a conversation with my executive producer after the show, but I announced today. They didn't know. They didn't know that I'm leaving the show.
Sure, that will be a very interesting conversation.
They do now. But I felt like it's important. I need to use this platform to, instead of doing the right thing, which by then, like they want me to like have a certain thing to do, but I'm like, no, because I haven't been nurtured the way I need to be nurtured. So I need to stand up for myself, create boundaries, and create this new opportunity for myself. But the vulnerability piece of that is that I felt like I was failing. Like I wasn't able to get sponsors for my show. And without sponsors, it's extremely expensive to run a radio show, like more money than I have. And so I had to sit with that and be like, I love doing this show. I love having these connections. I loved having the reach that from this platform, because it was much more than I could have created on my own in a short amount of time. And yet I was like, here I am, unable to afford this show. And I had to sit with that. And I have felt so much shame, like a lot of shame, and then a lot of disappointment. I'm also working with the goddess Dumavati in my women's group, she is the goddess of disappointment and letting go and failure and all that. So she's like, just sit in that. And what's the lesson out of that is like, okay, like it's not congruent with me right now. This platform is not congruent, but the show is.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because like failure is such a big thing. I feel like, especially like, I mean, just for humans, but women too, because I feel like we are oftentimes like we're trying to come up, like level up into this space and be seen as equal. Right. And I've struggled with the fear of failure for a good portion of my life. And there was so many opportunities that I missed throughout. Like I've been offered like more opportunities, I would say, than most over the course of my life, which I have probably squandered or just didn't take out of fear of failure. Like I didn't reach into myself as much as I could have. And it follows us, like the regret, so much of that. But when you don't just stand up for yourself and be in alignment with your truth and be like, no, this is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to do, and I have no effing idea what that's going to look like, and it can be messy and it can fall down, but you fall down, you get back up again. And failure is about learning what not to do, right? We have so much negative connotation with failure, but the thing is, we fail, but that there are so many people that never even try to begin with. So if you even try, you're already a step above like so many people. Not like in a like, I'm better than them, but like you're making the effort and you're trying, and that is worth a lot. And if you can face failure, just like look at it dead in the eye and be like, I see you, and I'm going to use you as a building block, and not a brick that's landing on my head. And, and it's just such an important thing. And it's not comfortable. Failure is not comfortable. But the thing is when it's not comfortable, that's when we're growing. That's when you're going to thrive. And like when that little seed, that little plant like pops out of that seed, like that's not comfortable. I mean, I'm about plants, so I can't say for sure, but it doesn't seem like it'd be.
But you're imagining squeezing.
Yeah, I'm imagining this squeezing. It's like, oh God, it's so tight there. I gotta get up. It's like, oh, it's dark, and it's like I have to feel the sun. I gotta go higher, and like whatever you gotta break. It's like, oh man, there's this freaking rock in the way, and I gotta like roll around the rock. Like, who put that rock there? Come on, guys. Like, I thought I just
the universe put it there to teach me a lesson. I'm sure of it.
Exactly. It's just like, man, this little plant's like, I thought I was gonna have a straight shot, like straight up there. Now I got to do this wiggly thing, and like these humans put cement down, and now I got to go around this way. But I'm gonna find that crack, and I'm gonna grow, and I'm gonna find the sun. By golly, and nobody's gonna tell me otherwise. So just find the sun.
Find the sun. I think that's a beautiful place to end. Find the sun. Because I know you have some appointments coming up and you need time to prepare for that and ground. So I want to honor that because I could talk to you much longer. And
we can have coffee sometime. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll get together and perhaps do another show.
Yes, it sounds great to me. Happy to do it anytime.
Okay, my friends. So thank you so much. And we'll be in
welcome.
touch, and everything will be posted in the show notes on both the YouTube channel as well as the Voice America Empowerment channel. And all the podcast places. I'm not going to list all of them. There's so many. There's just your favorite ones. It's there.
That's awesome. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on and also to share space with you when you made your big announcement. I do. I'm grateful I got to be there for that.
Yeah. So you didn't know that. I think no one knew this except for
No, I didn't.
Like,
she showed up and she's like, here, we're going to do this thing. And I was like, okay, let's do this thing.
I just want to let you know that you're not surprised when I say this. So here it goes.
Yeah.
But thank you for being there and holding that space for me to be able to announce that. And
yeah, you're so welcome.
Authentically.
Awesome. Okay. Enjoy the day. Good luck with your meeting.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.